Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today we turn our attention to one of the most intense and fascinating rivalries of the 20th century, the arms race between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. It was a competition that reached far beyond politics and ideology. It was fought in the skies, beneath the oceans, in laboratories, and even in the shadows of secrecy. While the world watched missiles paraded through city squares and astronauts launched into space, a quieter and far more complex struggle was unfolding, one that shaped global security and international relations for decades to come. In this lecture, we will journey through the hidden layers of that conflict, from the silent war beneath the waves to the birth of acoustic intelligence, to the doctrines that shifted military thinking forever. We will see how countermoves and strategies defined not only the balance of power, but also the lives of those caught in the machinery of this global standoff. By exploring the unseen arms race, the human factor behind it, and the legacy it left behind, we will come to understand not just the Cold War, but the echoes of that era that still shape our world today. Before we begin, I'd love to hear from you. When you think of the Cold War, what's the first image or story that comes to mind? Drop it in the comments, and let's see how our perceptions connect with the realities we're about to uncover. Also, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons so you don't miss the rest of the series. Now let's step into the shadows of the Cold War and uncover the unseen arms race. In 1962, a Soviet submarine commander held the fate of the world in his hands. His finger hovered over the nuclear trigger as depth charges exploded around him. But what most historians miss is the secret technology that nearly forced his hand. A breakthrough so subtle it reshaped the entire Cold War. This isn't about missiles or spies. It's about how one unnoticed innovation brought us closer to annihilation than we ever knew. While the world watched missiles and nuclear tests, the real battle was happening unseen beneath the ocean's surface. Submarines became the ultimate chess pieces in Cold War strategy. Invisible, mobile platforms that could deliver devastating nuclear strikes with little warning. Their ability to disappear into the depths made them both feared and vulnerable. If detected, they lost their strategic advantage. Early in the Cold War, submarine warfare relied on traditional methods of detection. Ships would use primitive sonar, dropping depth charges in suspect areas to force submarines to surface. This cat-and-mouse game created dozens of dangerous encounters. The evidence suggests submarine crews on both sides faced impossible choices when detected: launch their nuclear payload or risk destruction without retaliation. The hunter-killer dynamic changed when engineers developed more sophisticated listening technologies. Sonar evolved from simple pinging devices to sensitive arrays capable of tracking submarines across vast distances. What began as spotty detections became reliable intelligence on submarine movements. This invisible detection capability made nuclear missile subs far more vulnerable than their designers had anticipated. Naval historians note that submarine commanders suddenly found themselves at a disadvantage. Where once they could operate with near impunity in deep waters, now their movements could be tracked and predicted. The psychological impact on crews was significant. Knowing your position might already be compromised changed how commanders approached patrol patterns and launch protocols. Sonar technology advanced through multiple generations during this period. The first breakthrough involved hydrophone arrays that could detect engine and propeller noises at greater ranges. Later improvements allowed analysts to distinguish between different submarine classes by their acoustic signatures. This became crucial for targeting the most dangerous nuclear missile boats. The strategic consequence was immediate. Submarines could no longer count on remaining undetected for entire patrols. This forced changes in deployment patterns, with nuclear-armed subs staying in defended bastions rather than roaming freely. The certainty of detection eventually led both superpowers to develop quieter submarine designs and alternative strategies. This shift in underwater warfare placed new demands on naval personnel. Sonar operators became as critical to mission success as missile technicians. Their ability to classify contacts and maintain tracking often determined the outcome of undersea encounters. The best crews could identify a submarine's type and nationality based solely on its acoustic profile. At the same time, submarine commanders had to adapt to this new reality. Tactics evolved to include more evasive maneuvers and specialized equipment for noise reduction. Each advancement in detection technology prompted countermeasures, creating a continuous cycle of innovation beneath the waves. The transition to advanced sonar marked more than just a technical milestone. It altered the fundamental nature of submarine warfare. What had been a contest of concealment became a battle of signatures and countermeasures. This new reality would drive much of the later technological competition between the superpowers. Turning to the next chapter, this breakthrough in underwater surveillance created an unexpected demand for new specialists, experts in the science of sound itself. The race to catalog every noise in the ocean became its own secret front in the Cold War, with implications that reached far beyond naval warfare. Sound became the most valuable currency in the Cold War. While nuclear missiles captured headlines, military planners recognized that identifying submarines by their acoustic signatures was far more strategically useful than counting warheads. Each vessel produced a unique combination of noises from its propellers, engines, and hull vibrations. These sounds became fingerprints that revealed a submarine's location, type, and sometimes even its mission. Naval engineers developed specialized equipment to capture these acoustic signatures. Hydrophones placed on the sea floor recorded subtle variations in sound propagation through different water temperatures and salinity. The data showed that sound traveled farther underwater than through air, especially in the deep sound channels where temperature gradients created natural acoustic waveguides. This meant Soviet and American submarines could be detected hundreds of miles away under optimal conditions. The race to map underwater soundscapes intensified in the early Cold War years. Both superpowers launched scientific expeditions under the cover of oceanographic research. Ships trailing long hydrophone arrays crisscrossed the Atlantic and Pacific, charting how sound behaved across different regions. Signal processors analyzed recordings to distinguish natural sounds from man-made ones. Researchers studied everything from whale calls to shifting ice sheets that might mask submarine movements. Early acoustic espionage efforts were surprisingly low-tech. Intelligence services deployed modified fishing trawlers equipped with recording devices near naval bases. These vessels documented the sounds of submarines leaving and returning to port. Over time, these libraries of recordings allowed analysts to recognize specific vessel classes just from their acoustic profiles. Quiet diesel-electric subs had distinct signatures from nuclear-powered boats with their constant reactor cooling pumps. The next stage involved permanent listening posts. Engineers designed networks of hydrophones connected by undersea cables to shore stations. These arrays could triangulate submarine positions by comparing the time sound arrived at different sensors. The technology improved rapidly during the 1950s, progressing from simple detection to tracking multiple contacts simultaneously. Processing power limited early systems, requiring analysts to manually review sonograms for patterns. The creation of SOSIS marked the breakthrough moment. This network of hydrophone arrays spanned critical choke points in the Atlantic and Pacific. Strategists considered SOSUS more valuable than any single weapon system because it provided continuous monitoring of submarine movements. Early deployments proved effective, detecting Soviet submarines attempting to transit the Greenland-Iceland-UK gap at distances once thought impossible. SOSUS information flowed directly to naval command centers through secure data links. Commanders could now direct patrol aircraft and hunter-killer submarines to intercept enemy contacts rather than searching blindly. The presence of fixed listening posts also served as a deterrent by reducing the uncertainty in submarine operations. Soviet planners had to assume their boats might be tracked throughout their patrols. This new capability forced changes in naval strategy on both sides. The United States shifted submarine patrol patterns to avoid predictable routes that might be monitored by Soviet arrays. Fleet exercises incorporated elaborate deception tactics to mask acoustic signatures. Both navies invested in quieter propulsion systems and vibration dampening technologies to reduce acoustic emissions. The evolution of acoustic intelligence created an unexpected asymmetry. While missile ranges could be measured and warhead counts estimated, acoustic detection capabilities remained closely guarded secrets. Neither side knew exactly how much the other could hear. This uncertainty introduced new caution in submarine operations that may have prevented several Cold War incidents from escalating further. Turning to the Soviet response, their engineers faced different technical and geographic challenges in countering these listening networks. What they developed would change submarine warfare again, leveraging an unexpected weakness in the acoustic surveillance system everyone thought was unbeatable. The USSR's response to acoustic detection was as subtle as the threat itself. Soviet engineers faced a formidable challenge, making their submarines quieter than the sensitive American hydrophone arrays could detect. Their solution wouldn't involve bigger weapons or faster speeds, but rather the precise science of sound manipulation. Soviet naval designers confronted three key problems. First, their nuclear submarines had inherently noisy cooling pumps required for reactor operation. Second, their propeller designs created distinctive cavitation patterns easily identifiable on sonar. Third, the construction techniques used in Soviet shipyards produced holes that transmitted more vibration into the water than their Western counterparts. Each of these issues left acoustic signatures that SOSUS could exploit. Early Soviet efforts focused on mechanical isolation. Engineers installed vibration dampeners between noisy machinery and the submarine hull. They developed new mounting systems for pumps and turbines that reduced sound transmission into the surrounding water. While these measures helped, they weren't enough to evade the increasingly sophisticated detection networks. The breakthrough came through propeller innovation. Soviet scientists realized traditional screw propellers created cavitation bubbles that collapsed with distinctive acoustic signatures. Their solution involved precisely machined 7-bladed propellers with unusual curvature that reduced cavitation at operational speeds. The new designs required exotic alloys and manufacturing tolerances previously unimaginable in Soviet industry. Cold War historians note the Rubin Design Bureau made quieting technology their top priority during this period. Their engineers experimented with skewed propeller blades that distributed cavitation noise across multiple frequencies. They developed pump jet propulsion systems that moved water more smoothly than traditional propellers. Each innovation made Soviet submarines acoustically quieter than the previous generation. Submarine hull design also evolved to complement these improvements. The Soviets introduced double hull constructions with sound-absorbing coatings between layers. They reconfigured internal machinery layouts to minimize vibration pathways to the exterior. Even the placement of external fittings was reconsidered to reduce flow noise during movement. The quiet propeller technology marked a turning point. New Soviet submarine classes like the Akula demonstrated noise levels comparable to American designs for the first time. This negated some of the acoustic advantage that SOSUS had provided, forcing Western navies to upgrade their detection systems again. The cycle of detection and countermeasure continued escalating. Soviet naval doctrine shifted to reflect these technological changes. Submarines no longer relied solely on speed and diving depth for protection. Quiet operation became the primary survival strategy, with commanders trained to minimize acoustic emissions during critical phases of missions. This required changes in everything from reactor output management to crew discipline regarding noise-generating activities. The evidence suggests these Soviet innovations surprised Western analysts. Intelligence agencies had underestimated Soviet capabilities in precision manufacturing and hydroacoustics. The realization that Soviet submarines could now hide effectively in the acoustic shadows forced re-evaluations of naval strategy on both sides. This technological leap had strategic consequences beyond submarine warfare. It demonstrated that the arms race wasn't just about building more powerful weapons, but about solving specific engineering challenges. The Soviets proved they could match Western technological ingenuity when focused on clearly defined problems. What began as an effort to evade detection grew into comprehensive acoustic warfare research. Soviet scientists studied ocean thermoclines and salinity layers that could bend sound waves to hide submarines. They developed tactics using natural ocean noise to mask their movements. Each solution addressed a specific vulnerability that Western systems exploited. Turning to doctrine, these underwater innovations forced both superpowers to reconsider fundamental assumptions about nuclear deterrence. The balance of power no longer depended solely on warhead counts, but on the ability to keep second strike forces hidden and survivable. This realization would shape nuclear strategy for decades. The arms race wasn't just about weapons, it was about ideas. Military doctrine represents how nations translate technology and strategy into actual warfare. Before acoustic intelligence changed the game, submarine doctrine focused mainly on weapon payloads and dive capabilities. That perspective shifted when commanders realized detection technology could negate their most advanced platforms. Acoustic intelligence forced a fundamental rethink of naval strategy. The evidence suggests this began when analysts recognized submarine patrol patterns had become predictable. Fleet exercises demonstrated that even the quietest nuclear submarines left detectable signatures during certain maneuvers. This vulnerability upended traditional assumptions about second strike capabilities. Military strategists on both sides adjusted their approaches. The United States moved away from forward submarine patrols near Soviet waters. Instead, they established defensive bastions where multiple submarines could protect each other from detection. Soviet doctrine shifted toward using attack submarines to protect ballistic missile boats, creating layered defensive screens. The changes extended beyond deployment patterns. Training emphasized acoustic discipline at all levels. Submarine crews practiced maintaining silence during critical operations, minimizing everything from mechanical noise to dropped tools. Engineers redesigned equipment to operate more quietly, sometimes at the cost of performance or reliability. These adaptations reflected the new priority on stealth over firepower. Information superiority emerged as the decisive factor. Commanders needed comprehensive data about enemy detection capabilities while protecting their own secrets. This created demand for specialist officers who understood both acoustics and operational planning. Naval academies added courses on sound propagation and sensor technology to their curriculum. The traditional metrics of naval power became less relevant. Submarine counts mattered less than knowing which vessels could operate undetected. Missile ranges meant little if launch platforms couldn't evade tracking. This realization redirected research budgets toward quieting technologies and advanced sonar systems. Nuclear deterrence theory adapted to these technical realities. Strategists recognized that survivability mattered more than sheer numbers. A few undetectable submarines could maintain second strike capability better than dozens of noisy ones. This principle influenced arms control negotiations, shifting focus from warhead limits to verification of acoustic signatures. The doctrine shift affected other military branches as well. Air forces studied how to apply similar principles to stealth aircraft design. Armies investigated ground surveillance systems that could detect vibrations or thermal signatures. Each service recognized that information dominance might prove more valuable than traditional firepower. Naval exercises evolved to test new concepts. War games incorporated simulated detection scenarios where submarines had to complete missions while avoiding theoretical sensor networks. These exercises revealed unexpected vulnerabilities, like the acoustic footprint created by torpedo tube operations. The most significant change involved decision-making timelines. Commanders now needed real-time acoustic data to assess threats. This required faster communications between sensor networks and fleet headquarters. The military bureaucracy adapted to support quicker, more informed choices based on emerging detection technologies. What began as a technical challenge became a strategic revolution. The key was recognizing that superior information could offset numerical disadvantages. This principle would later extend beyond submarine warfare into other domains, reshaping modern military thinking. Turning to broader implications, this doctrinal evolution revealed how technological progress doesn't always follow predictable paths. Breakthroughs in one area can force cascading changes across entire strategic frameworks. The next phase of the Cold War would see this pattern accelerate as both superpowers raced to master new domains of warfare. The real arms race was invisible to the public eye. While newspapers tracked missile counts and nuclear tests, engineers worked on technologies that never made headlines. This quiet competition followed a familiar pattern. One side developed a new capability, forcing the other to respond. The cycle repeated endlessly beneath official announcements and speeches. Technological upmanship drove progress in unexpected directions. Each breakthrough in submarine detection prompted countermeasures in stealth technology, which then spurred more advanced sensors. Defense laboratories focused on solving specific technical problems rather than building superweapons. The work required specialized knowledge in acoustics, materials science, and signal processing that few outside classified programs understood. The escalation was relentless. Soviet improvements in propeller quieting forced Western analysts to develop better sonar algorithms. American advances in computer processing pushed Soviet engineers to refine their noise reduction techniques. Neither side could afford to fall behind, yet neither could openly acknowledge the race. Budget requests obscured true spending, and project names revealed nothing about their purpose. Secret projects flourished during this period. One initiative focused on mapping ocean sound channels to predict detection ranges. Another explored using marine life sounds as acoustic camouflage. The most sensitive programs involved analyzing the minute vibrations of submarine hulls under different operating conditions. Teams of mathematicians worked on algorithms to extract meaningful patterns from the noise collected by hydrophone arrays. Technology historians note how these programs operated differently from conventional weapons development. They required sustained funding with uncertain outcomes and employed specialists who often didn't fit military culture. Physicists worked alongside naval officers, while computer scientists collaborated with submariners. The interdisciplinary nature of the work created challenges in communication and project management. The next breakthrough came through digital signal processing. Early hydrophone arrays generated overwhelming amounts of data that human analysts couldn't process quickly enough. Computers changed this by automating pattern recognition. Specialized software could now identify a submarine's acoustic signature in real time, distinguishing it from background noise with increasing accuracy. This marked a shift from passive listening to active analysis. Computer analysis introduced new capabilities. Systems could track multiple contacts simultaneously across vast ocean areas. They compensated for environmental variables like temperature and salinity that affected sound propagation. Most importantly, they learned to anticipate submarine movements based on past behavior. The combination of advanced sensors and smart algorithms created unprecedented situational awareness for naval commanders. The unseen arms race ultimately transformed how militaries approached technological advantage. Success depended less on sheer power than on mastering subtle details. A slightly quieter propulsion system or more efficient signal processing algorithm could outweigh the addition of dozens of missiles. This lesson extended beyond submarine warfare to influence development in aircraft, satellites, and other strategic systems. What began as an effort to track submarines became part of a broader revolution in information warfare. The ability to collect, process, and act on data faster than the adversary emerged as a decisive factor. Military planners recognized that future conflicts might be won by superior analysis rather than superior firepower. This realization would shape defense thinking long after the Cold War ended. Turning to human factors, technology alone couldn't guarantee advantage. The people operating these systems faced intense pressure to interpret signals correctly amidst uncertainty. Their decisions, made in moments with imperfect information, carried consequences that echoed far beyond any single encounter. Technology alone didn't decide the Cold War. People did. Behind every system, sensor, and warning light sat individuals making choices that could alter history. These decision-makers faced pressures we can scarcely imagine, balancing incomplete information against unthinkable consequences. Their judgment calls in moments of crisis often mattered more than the technology at their disposal. Submarine commanders operated under unique psychological strains. Isolated for months in steel tubes beneath the ocean, they carried weapons capable of ending civilizations. Their training emphasized discipline, but no preparation could fully simulate the stress of actual combat conditions. False sonar contacts and equipment malfunctions created constant tension during patrols. Psychology experts note these conditions produced decision fatigue. Commanders had to evaluate ambiguous signals while exhausted from sleep deprivation. The submarine environment itself, with its artificial light, recycled air, and constant mechanical noises, wore down mental resilience. Studies suggest cognitive performance declines measurably during extended undersea deployments. Close calls occurred more frequently than official histories acknowledge. Some involved misinterpreted sonar returns that nearly triggered weapons launches. Others stemmed from communication delays that left commanders acting without updated orders. The evidence suggests technology sometimes compounded these risks by providing too much ambiguous data rather than clear indicators. Human reliability became the critical variable as systems grew more complex. Automated warning systems could generate false alerts from whale songs or seismic activity. Officers had seconds to determine whether a threat was real before considering retaliation. Training emphasized verifying signals through multiple channels, but the time pressure remained intense. The psychological impact extended beyond command decisions. Sonar operators faced intense concentration demands during long watches. A moment's inattention might miss a faint contact among ocean noise. Technical crews maintained equipment while knowing any lapse could reveal their position. This pervasive stress affected judgment accuracy across the entire crew. Technology influenced human choices in unexpected ways. Advanced sensors created an illusion of certainty that didn't always match reality. Commanders sometimes trusted displays more than their instincts, while others remained skeptical of automated warnings. The interface design between humans and machines became as strategically important as the hardware itself. Crew dynamics also played a crucial role. Effective teams developed communication shortcuts during emergencies. Less cohesive crews might hesitate or contradict each other during critical moments. Navies studied crew interactions extensively, looking for patterns that predicted better decision-making under stress. The human factor introduced unpredictability into carefully calculated deterrence theories. No system could account for every possible reaction during crises. Personality traits, cultural backgrounds, and even temporary moods influenced outcomes in ways that defied mathematical modeling. This unpredictability may have prevented some conflicts by fostering caution on both sides. What emerged from these pressures was a paradoxical reality. The most advanced weapons required the most human judgment to control. Safeguards and protocols attempted to prevent catastrophic errors, but ultimate authority still resided with individuals. This distributed responsibility across multiple decision points created buffers against rash actions. The evidence suggests technology amplified human judgment rather than replacing it. Better sensors provided more data, but people still had to interpret it. Faster communications allowed consultation, but commanders retained final authority. The Cold War stability depended on this balance between human oversight and technical capability. Turning to geopolitics, these human-technical interactions played out on a global scale. Leaders in Moscow and Washington made choices based on filtered information from these underwater encounters. The transition from tactical decisions to strategic consequences formed an often overlooked link in Cold War dynamics. The Cold War was a game with hidden rules. While the public saw missile counts and summit meetings, the real moves happened in classified briefings and technical reports. Geopolitical stakes extended far beyond any single weapon system. They involved the fundamental balance of power between competing worldviews. Each technological development altered this balance in ways that took years to fully understand. Technology changed how nations projected power. Improved submarine detection removed the certainty of hidden nuclear arsenals. Quiet propulsion systems restored some of that uncertainty. These shifts occurred beneath public awareness, yet influenced high-level diplomacy. Arms control negotiations had to account for capabilities neither side would openly discuss. The evidence suggests some breakthroughs were deliberately kept secret to maintain strategic advantages. Political scientists note how these technical developments created ripple effects. When Soviet submarines grew quieter, NATO adjusted its maritime patrol patterns. This prompted changes in Soviet access to key shipping lanes. Such adjustments then influenced everything from trade policies to alliance structures. What began as an engineering challenge could reshape international relations. Diplomatic records show how technology altered negotiations. The U.S. hesitated to limit submarine numbers when Soviet quieting technology advanced. Soviet negotiators resisted restrictions that would reveal their detection capabilities. Both sides pursued arms control while secretly developing systems that might bypass future agreements. This dual approach characterized much of Cold War diplomacy. The strategic calculus evolved continually. Early warning systems reduced fears of surprise attacks, but created new risks of false alerts. Improved communications allowed crisis consultation, but also raised expectations for rapid responses. Each technical solution solved one problem while potentially creating others. Leaders had to account for these dynamics in their decision-making. Mutual assured destruction emerged as the governing principle, but its implementation was more complex than often portrayed. Second strike capability depended on surviving forces being both protected and credible. Submarines provided this only if they could remain hidden after a first strike. The quieter they became, the more they contributed to deterrent stability. This balance required careful maintenance. Too much reliance on submarines made other forces appear less important. Too little investment risked vulnerability to breakthroughs in detection. Military planners constantly adjusted resource allocations in response to intelligence estimates about enemy capabilities. The nuclear triad concept developed partly from these considerations. By distributing weapons across land, sea, and air platforms, nations reduced the chance that any single technological breakthrough could neutralize their deterrent. Submarines formed the most survivable leg, but their effectiveness depended on continual technological upkeep. Crisis behavior reflected these underlying realities. During tense periods, both superpowers took extraordinary steps to protect their second strike capabilities. Submarines dispersed to less predictable patrol areas. Communication protocols tightened to prevent accidental escalations. These actions demonstrated awareness of how technical factors could influence political outcomes. What stabilized the Cold War wasn't just the threat of mutual destruction, but the shared understanding of its mechanisms. Leaders on both sides recognized certain red lines even when they weren't explicitly stated. This unspoken framework prevented the arms race from spiraling out of control despite its inherent risks. The global chessboard had pieces that moved according to their own logic. Technical specialists influenced strategy as much as diplomats did. Budget decisions in research labs could matter more than speeches at the UN. Understanding this hidden layer is essential to grasping the Cold War's true dynamics. Turning to secrecy's role, the classification systems around these technologies created their own strategic effects. What governments chose to protect or reveal became moves in the larger game. This intentional obscurity shaped perceptions and calculations in ways that historians are still unraveling. The most important lessons were classified. While the world debated missile gaps, the real strategic insights remained locked in safes. Secrecy wasn't just a precaution, it became a weapon in itself, shaping perceptions and decisions throughout the Cold War. This culture of restricted knowledge created parallel realities: what governments knew, what they suspected others knew, and what the public understood. The system operated on strict need-to-know principles. Engineers working on submarine propellers might never meet the analysts interpreting acoustic data. Naval officers received carefully filtered intelligence briefings. This compartmentalization prevented leaks, but also hindered comprehensive understanding, even among senior decision-makers. The evidence suggests some critical connections only emerged years after the fact. Historians face unique challenges when studying these secret programs. Archival researchers must piece together fragments from declassified documents, often redacted to the point of obscurity. Technical reports exist without context, operational memos without follow-up. The historical record resembles a puzzle missing most pieces, with blank spaces sometimes more revealing than the information itself. Some declassified revelations have reshaped our understanding. Records show how early detection systems performed worse than claimed, while enemy capabilities were often overestimated. Other documents reveal how minor technical advantages were exaggerated for budgetary or political reasons. The gap between internal assessments and public statements was sometimes vast. Archival researchers note patterns in what remains classified even today. Details about specific submarine patrols and encounters still haven't been released. Technical specifications for certain sonar systems remain secret decades later. This suggests some methods and capabilities may still be in use, their effectiveness depending on opponents not knowing their limits. Secrecy created strategic effects beyond security. By carefully choosing what to reveal, nations could mislead opponents about capabilities. A single declassified report about submarine detection ranges might be intended to sow doubt rather than inform. The practice of controlled leaks turned information management into an art form. The secrecy system also influenced domestic politics. Legislatures approved military budgets without knowing exactly what they funded. Citizens debated defense policies without access to underlying facts. This disconnect between public discourse and operational reality persists today in many national security matters. Secrecy's most profound impact was on perception management. The uncertainty it created became a stabilizing factor in some cases. Neither side could be certain of the other's detection capabilities, encouraging caution during crises. In other instances, lack of transparency increased risks by fostering worst-case assumptions. The culture of secrecy extended beyond governments. Defense contractors worked on projects they couldn't discuss, even internally. Scientists signed lifetime confidentiality agreements about basic research. This created intellectual silos that sometimes hindered technological progress, even as it protected secrets. What emerges from the available evidence is a paradox. Excessive secrecy could be as dangerous as excessive transparency. Some historians argue more information sharing might have prevented certain close calls. Others maintain that controlled uncertainty helped maintain strategic stability. The truth likely lies somewhere between these positions. Turning to modern implications, these historical practices established patterns still visible today. The balance between transparency and security remains contentious. New technologies have changed the secrecy landscape, but fundamental questions about what should be known and by whom persist. The Cold War's legacy of classified knowledge continues shaping how nations approach sensitive technologies and strategic decisions. The system left behind an incomplete historical record that researchers must navigate carefully. What was hidden often proves as significant as what was revealed, and sometimes the absence of evidence tells its own story. Understanding the Cold War requires reading between redacted lines as much as studying the visible documents. The transition to the present shows how these historical secrets continue influencing contemporary strategy. Technologies developed during this period still serve in modern navies, their capabilities and limitations rooted in decisions made decades ago. The choices about what to classify then affect what we understand now. The Cold War never really ended. It just changed form. While the geopolitical landscape shifted after 1991, the underlying dynamics of technological competition and strategic deterrence remained. Today's great power rivalries follow patterns established during the submarine detection battles of last century, just adapted for new domains. Contemporary defense strategies still grapple with the same fundamental questions about visibility and vulnerability. Modern submarines employ advanced quieting technologies descended from Cold War breakthroughs. Detection systems now incorporate machine learning algorithms to process acoustic data, continuing the evolution that began with early SOSUS arrays. The players have changed, but the game continues. New technological frontiers have expanded the battlefield. Cyber surveillance has replaced some acoustic intelligence gathering. Satellites now monitor ocean surfaces with precision once reserved for underwater hydrophones. Artificial intelligence sifts through massive data sets looking for patterns, much like early analysts parsed sonograms. The scale and speed changed, but the strategic purpose remains: identifying threats. Modern espionage demonstrates these continuities. Recent incidents involved attempts to map underwater communication cables, echoing Cold War efforts to tap Soviet seabed links. Intelligence agencies still prioritize technical details about adversaries' submarine capabilities. The competition has extended into space-based surveillance and electromagnetic spectrum dominance, creating new versions of the old detection challenge. Current strategists note how the information advantage has become even more critical. Knowing an adversary's capabilities matters as much as having advanced weapons. This insight originated in the Cold War's acoustic detection race. Now it applies across multiple domains, from cyber operations to satellite tracking. The principle of information dominance remains central to military planning. The enduring lesson concerns technological asymmetry. Cold War experience showed how breakthroughs in seemingly obscure fields could alter strategic balances. Today's militaries invest in quantum computing, hypersonics, and artificial intelligence for similar reasons. These technologies promise advantages analogous to early sonar developments, capabilities that could reshape deterrence calculations before adversaries catch up. Cold War innovations directly influence modern systems. Sonar technology developed for submarine detection now aids marine research and underwater archaeology. Signal processing techniques refined during the acoustic intelligence race underpin modern data analysis tools. Even the organizational structures for managing technical intelligence evolved from Cold War prototypes. The psychological dimensions persist as well. Decision-makers still face time pressure during crises, though communication technologies have changed the tempo. Human factors analysis continues shaping military protocols, building on research into how submarine crews handled stress. The challenges of maintaining judgment under extreme conditions remained universal. What began as a struggle for acoustic superiority expanded into broader information warfare concepts. The knowledge that underwater listening networks could destabilize or secure nuclear deterrence led to comprehensive approaches for controlling information flow. Today's equivalence involves securing data networks and protecting satellite constellations, the new high ground in strategic competition. The Cold War's legacy appears most clearly in how nations approach emerging technologies. The pattern of innovation and countermeasure continues, with drone swarms instead of submarines, electronic warfare instead of sonar. Strategic thinkers still work to anticipate how new capabilities might disrupt existing balances, just as submarine quieting once did. Modern strategists study Cold War decision-making to understand current challenges. The parallels between historical close calls and contemporary near misses reveal persistent vulnerabilities. This historical perspective helps contextualize today's technological competitions, showing how they fit within longer trajectories of military innovation. The transition to quantum and cyber domains demonstrates how the essential dynamic endures. Competitors still seek advantages through asymmetric technical developments. The importance of controlling information persists even if the methods have evolved. What changed wasn't the nature of strategic competition, but the tools available to wage it. The Cold War's quieter lessons continue shaping defense thinking. Investments in basic research still aim for breakthrough capabilities. The focus on human system integration remains vital. Most importantly, the understanding that technological surprise can alter strategic calculations continues guiding military planning. These insights form the enduring inheritance from the underwater detection race. Turning to final reflections, the true significance of these developments lies in their demonstration of how technological competition operates. The patterns established during the Cold War provide a lens for understanding today's emerging rivalries. Innovations that seem narrowly technical often carry strategic consequences far beyond their immediate applications. This fundamental reality hasn't changed, only the specific technologies have. The true game changer wasn't a weapon, it was a way of thinking. The Cold War arms race seemed to focus on missiles and warheads, but the decisive development involved how nations approached information itself. Underwater acoustics became the testing ground for a fundamental shift in strategic reasoning that would extend far beyond submarine warfare. We've traced how technological developments evolved, from early sonar to advanced detection networks, from noisy propellers to stealth designs. Each innovation responded to a specific challenge, but together they revealed a pattern. The evidence suggests that as detection capabilities improved, military planners began emphasizing information control as much as destructive power. The moment of realization came gradually. Analysts noticed that knowing an enemy's submarine location mattered more than having more submarines. Commanders recognized that understanding sensor limitations could offset numerical disadvantages. This insight transformed military thinking across multiple domains. Consider how these paradigm shifts manifested. Early Cold War doctrine measured strength in warhead counts. Later assessments prioritized survivability and stealth. The U.S. Navy's SOSUS network demonstrated how information systems could provide strategic leverage without firing a shot. Soviet quieting technology showed how countering such systems required scientific innovation rather than brute force. Historians note this transition reflected broader changes in warfare. The industrial age focus on mass production gave way to information age concerns about precision and knowledge. Submarine commanders became information managers as much as weapons operators. Naval architects thought in terms of signatures rather than just performance specifications. The overlooked innovation that reshaped the Cold War wasn't any single technology, but the concept of information dominance. This principle held that comprehensive situational awareness could deter adversaries as effectively as destructive capability. When applied to submarine warfare, it meant protecting one's own acoustic profile while penetrating the enemy's. Strategic thinkers extended this approach to other domains. Early warning radars, satellite reconnaissance, and signal intelligence all followed similar patterns. Each sought to gather more data than the opponent while protecting one's own secrets. The competition became about processing power and analysts as much as about weapons platforms. Military planners incorporated these lessons into doctrine. Training emphasized operational security alongside marksmanship. Research budgets shifted toward sensors and computers. The quietest submarine mattered more than the fastest, the best signal processing more than the biggest warhead. These priorities endure in modern defense planning. The shift to information superiority changed nuclear deterrence. Survivability replaced sheer numbers as the measure of second strike capability. Arms control agreements began accounting for verification methods. Crisis management protocols incorporated more data sharing procedures to prevent miscalculations. What began as technical adjustments in submarine design became a comprehensive strategic framework. Nations learned that technological advantages could be fleeting, but institutional knowledge persisted. The systems for gathering and analyzing data proved more durable than any specific weapon system. This explains why Cold War-era information systems remained operational long after original weapons platforms retired. Underwater hydrophone networks evolved into environmental monitoring tools. Signal processing algorithms developed for sonar found applications in medical imaging. The intellectual infrastructure outlasted its original purpose. The ultimate legacy appears in how modern military organizations operate. Cyber warfare units employ similar principles to those pioneered in acoustic intelligence. Space surveillance applies lessons learned from ocean monitoring. The fundamental concept remains controlling information flow while disrupting adversaries' attempts to do the same. Cold War submariners understood this intuitively. They knew their survival depended on remaining unseen while monitoring enemy movements. This mindset now applies across all military domains, demonstrating how specialized solutions can generate universal insights about competition and conflict. Turning to final considerations, the enduring lesson concerns how we evaluate strategic power. The Cold War demonstrated that dominance involves perception and knowledge as much as physical capability. This realization continues shaping how nations approach emerging technologies and security challenges in the present day. The Cold War arms race teaches us that strategic power relies as much on information as on firepower. Those underwater battles showed how quiet innovations could matter more than missile counts. Today's unseen competitions in cyber, AI, and space follow the same hidden pattern. The next arms race is already unfolding beyond public view. New technologies will shape it, but the core challenge remains: controlling what your adversary knows while protecting your own secrets. History suggests these quiet struggles determine outcomes as much as visible displays of force. If you found this perspective valuable, subscribe for more evidence-based history that connects past lessons to today's strategic dilemmas.